This video was brought to you by me.
Hey everybody, it's Sora850, and I love Kingdom Hearts Rechain of Memories. But you know what I absolutely hate? The freaking tutorials. These tutorials give you good advice, but because of the nature of this game's combat mechanics, and of course all of the other mechanics revolving the card system, they simply do not explain themselves very well, and kind of just leave you to fend for yourself a lot of the time. Some tutorials are very straightforward, while others are simply not straightforward. This video is going to be my personal attempt on breaking down the combat system in this game and kind of sort of trying to simplify it in a way that works for most people. However, I will be basing a lot of this on the way I personally like to play, but I will also be breaking the mechanics down to some degree to make sure that you guys will have a more smooth experience. We're going to start by learning how each type of card works and get to know how the effects are for each of these cards, since these are literally going to be the core focus of the entire combat. Cards are broken up into 4 separate categories: attack cards, magic cards, item cards, and enemy cards. I'm going to focus on the basics of the combat first, but one thing to note is that all of your cards will have different numbers, which means they all have different values. I'm going to go into more details on this later on as the tutorial progresses. The basics for battle are simple. Attack cards are your standard combos, while magic cards are used for casting spells like Fire, Blizzard, Thunder, and Cure, so on and so forth. Now, here's one thing to keep in mind when using magic cards. There are specific enemies that are very specific elements that cannot be damaged by these. For example, fire-based enemies cannot be damaged by fire cards. Thunder-based enemies cannot be damaged by thunder cards. Blizzard-based enemies cannot be damaged by blizzard cards, so on and so forth. And wizard enemies as well as green requiems cannot be damaged by magic at all. So keep this in mind when casting magic, because if you cast the same element on an enemy, it will actually heal them instead of actually damage them. So if you cast fire on a fire enemy or thunder on a thunder enemy, for example, you will heal them instead of actually damage them. Next, let's talk about item cards. These do not function like items do in other entries. These actually restore different types of cards. So, potion cards restore attack cards. Ether cards restore magic cards. Elixir cards restore both. There's different variants of each of these, and I recommend checking them out. But the best ones, in my opinion, are of course the Elixir cards and the Mega Elixir cards. Next, let's talk about enemy cards. These are the only cards in the game that do not have any specific numerical values, but they do provide different effects and have different CP costs depending on the type of enemy card as well as what the effect is. For example, this card here will increase your swing speed of only your attack cards, and it has a limit of 30, but as a cost, there's 55 CP here that you need. Actually using enemy cards is not as straightforward as simply picking them from your cards here like it is with all the others. You have to press a very specific button depending on the version you're playing, but for example here, since I'm playing the PS4 version, you have to press the touchpad in order to actually bring up the enemy cards here, and then you simply pick one. However, there's something you have to keep in mind with this. You can only have one enemy card active at a time, so if you activate one here, and then try to activate another, it immediately cancels the other one out. So do keep that in mind whenever you're using enemy cards, because you can screw yourself over thinking that you can use a bunch of these at once. Now for the tricky part, the values of each of the cards. They basically start at 0 and then they go through a value of 9, with 9 being the maximum value. The higher the value on these cards, the more CP they actually cost. However, they also have significantly better stats depending on the actual value. Now, one thing to keep in mind is 0 cards will always cost more than other cards. And the reason for that is because 0 cards are wild cards. No matter what slate or what card your enemy uses, a 0 card will literally break it, and you can literally destroy their entire combo with these. As a consequence, if you play the 0 card before they play their card, you're the one that's going to be slammed. AKA, they can break this card very, very easy. So this is a card that you want to use after they execute an attack, not before. And next up, let's talk about slates. If you want to review your slates, go to your status section on the menu. This right here has all your different slates. Slates are all of your abilities in this game, and these are also categorized between attack slates and magic slates. You also have slates that are used with friend cards, but either way, the basics of how to use slates, regardless of the category, is all the same. They each have different costs, and of course, different cards needed. For example, Sliding Dash here requires 3 Keyblade cards of the exact same type, but the total value has to be between 10 and 15. You also have slates that don't require specific costs, but just require specific cards. So for example, Thundaga here simply just requires 3 Thunder cards, and the value simply does not matter. My personal slate recommendations are as followed. Trinity Limit, Blizzaga, trust me, Blizzaga is more powerful than you think it is. Lethal Frame, which is also stupidly overpowered for no good reason, but I love it. And finally, Mega Flare. Slates are not just randomly given to you though. They are actually predetermined, and you can only get them from fighting enemies and leveling up, which we are about to go into in just a second. Now, let's talk about friend cards. Friend cards are given to you in a few factors. A lot of the time you can get them from first strikes, and a lot of the time you can get them from how well you do in battle with specific moves, like specific card breaks, or even specific amounts of combos landed. However, the friend card you get is purely random, as well as the value of that friend card. Looking at you, Donald, you have absolutely no value in this world. And in case anyone is wondering why I haven't touched on summon cards yet, it's because summon cards follow into the magic card category, and honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of most summon cards in this game. With the exception of Mushu for Mega Flare, the only other summon card that I would even deem useful is Cloud. And that's about it. But you can experiment with different summon cards if you really want to. I personally just don't use these or really recommend using these unless it's for a specific slate set require them that are actually decent. Next, let's talk about card breaks. Card breaks are done whenever an enemy plays a card, or when you play a card and then a higher value is played over it. So for example, a Shadow Heartless is about to play a 1. I just broke it because I played a 7. It's always dependent on the numerical value as well as who plays it. Your enemies can pull the same stunt, so if you play a low number card and then the enemy plays a higher number card, then your card is the one that's broken, and that's going to leave you vulnerable. So do keep this in mind and pay very close attention to the numerical values of the cards that are being played whenever you are fighting enemies, otherwise you will get screwed over. And one thing I should also mention as well in regards to card breaks, 0 cards fall in this as well. I actually mentioned this earlier when showing off the cards earlier, but I think it's better to put it into practice. 0 cards can always perform a card break no matter what the number is. So for example, there's a 4, 0 breaks it. However, I mentioned this earlier as well, if you play a 0 card first, if I can actually pull that off, oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, there you go. 0 cards can be broken first if you play them before your enemy does, and vice versa. So make sure you are the one breaking the card with the 0, not the other way around with them breaking your 0. And one more thing as well, card breaking also extends into slates. Slates can also be broken by higher numbers and zeros, and I will demonstrate how to use slates here in just a short moment. And now for battle perks. Whenever you're fighting enemies and you successfully kill them, they drop these little jewels. These jewels determine your experience. For whatever reason, you can actually miss experience by not collecting these jewels, but once you collect enough of them, that means you will gain enough experience and then you level up. And once you level up, you will be allowed to choose one of 3 bonuses. Increase max HP, increase max card points, or learn a new slate. Slates are the exception to this rule here because you are not guaranteed to learn a new slate on every level. These only appear at specific levels and they are honestly a priority whenever you get them. However, aside from that, my personal recommendation is focus on card points more than HP, because increasing your card points determines the number of cards you can add to your deck as well as the capability of being able to add stronger, higher numbered cards. So make sure you get this as high as you possibly can and just increase max HP whenever you feel the absolute need to. But as I stated earlier, every single time you see a new slate right here, take it immediately and do not wait on it, because if you wait too long, you can lose out on certain slates by letting your level get too high. And finally, let's talk about actually using slates. I've told you about these earlier and I've shown you how to acquire them. Now let's actually talk about utilizing them. As I stated earlier, different slates will require different cards and sometimes different numerical values. In order to actually utilize these, we have to do something known as card stocking. When actually using slates in battle, you will need to either press the triangle or Y button depending on the version you're playing to stock 3 total cards, like so. As you can see, doing this allows me to actually use my Mega Flare slate. So then we press the triangle button again, and then it fires off, completely destroying everything in its path. Now, here's something to keep in mind with slates. Whenever you are stocking cards, the total numerical value of what you stock ends up what you're being. So for example, we're going to stock these 3 cards. 9 plus 7 plus 6 equals 22. So you will have to actually do some math with this, but if you actually pull this off, you will be able to execute slates brilliantly. Now, one last thing as well. Like I said, some slates do not require specific numerical values, and you will be able to execute them without such. So for example, let's go ahead and activate Firaga. As you can see, this Firaga has a total value of 19, so I can cast it. But this Firaga has a total value of 16, but it's still the exact same slate. So it is purely dependent on the slate that you are using, and some slates will not activate if you don't have the right cards. I show off everything more in my videos on this game, as I did actually stream this game and post all of my VODs from that stream onto my YouTube channel, so you can feel free to check that out as well if you want, and hopefully that will give you a better understanding. But I'm hoping this combat tutorial actually broke down just enough to help you understand it, because like I said, the game does not do a very good job of explaining it. So hopefully I did. Thank you to everyone who watched, and I hope you guys have a smoother experience with Rechain of Memories, and I hope you have a good rest of your day or night. Peace out.